All right. Well, we were treated to quite the Monday Night Football game last evening between the rival Bills and New York Jets. We've got some breaking news to cover this morning as well, and plenty of other great action from Week 6. So we're gonna divert from the norm here in this episode and just go right into Monday Night Football because obviously there's a lot to talk about with these two teams, and not just from what happened on the field in the game, but of course let's dive into the gameplay first and foremost. Mark, the Jets lose this one, a really tough one for New York, a game that they could have had, but a lot of mistakes, and obviously the Bills, by way of Taron Johnson and Taylor Rapp, just completely destroyed the Jets in this game. 23-20, though, close game overall, but really it felt like the Bills' defense stole the show in this one.
Run game and defense. Dan,
Yeah.
we kind of were like, hey, let's just talk about the game so then we could talk about the news, right? And I think for both teams, the news today after watching that game last night, it really is so obvious that why both teams made the decisions they made. Josh Allen, he got back on track. That was my note for this game, right? Like Allen got back on track. A week ago, we were talking about he had 9 completions. He just looked like he was trying to be Superman, and it was forcing it, and it was just off, and he just didn't have anyone he could rely on. Obviously, then the Bills, what I love so much about this is when we found that Cook was going to be injured, they still committed to the run. They didn't just go, all right, Josh Allen's going to throw it 50 times. He ran a touchdown in. Their backup running back did a great job. Offensive line played really solid against a really stingy, good Jets defense. And then my thought on this game really as a whole was twofold too. I mean, the Jets still, they just can't put a complete game together. When you talk about your offense playing good, I mean, it was probably the best this offense has looked. Aaron Rodgers almost threw for 300 yards. That was kind of this weird storyline that's going around. It's like, can Aaron Rodgers throw for 300 yards? They get a nice game out of the running backs, and yet they can't get kicks to go in. You get doinks left and right. It didn't seem too windy in New Jersey last night, but it would just both teams struggling with the kicking game. The 2 doinks were just killers. And the Jets, listen, you fall to 2-4 and you lose a divisional game after you fire your head coach. I mean, it's so depressing for Jets fans. It's almost like they had to get Davante Adams today, Dan, because when you fired your coach, you're supposed to win the next game, right? You get
exactly. It's always you get the spirits lifted, the resurgence from the interim head coach, all of that.
And it felt like they never even had that to start the game. I mean, they were down early 10-3. Buffalo was up 20-10. If they don't get the Hail Mary, maybe the doinks later in the game don't even matter as much. I mean, because that lucky Aaron Rodgers play, I don't even know if we can call it lucky because
I want to say he's the best Hail Mary quarterback of all time, right?
He puts it up so high, and it's always in the end zone.
Yeah.
So he does get credit for that. But again, if they don't hit that play, I mean, this game's really not competitive going into the second half. So they got that play and they kept it competitive. They kept themselves a chance, but they couldn't finish off the game. Pumped for Bills fans this morning and for the win. And then you add on the Amari Cooper news. Spirits kind of flying really high in Buffalo. And at least maybe the Davante Adams news, as we'll talk about here in a second. And maybe that just, hopefully puts a wet blanket over the kind of fire that you're starting around this franchise after firing your coach and not getting a W, falling to 2-4 in a tough AFC East and a tough AFC to make the playoffs in.
Well, and what was, most surprising to me too was that this was a game where you got a lot of production out of Breece Hall, which we hadn't, seen, for a lot. He'd been injured and, was just, not being utilized properly and all of that stuff this year. Finally get a lot of production out of him. Rodgers, for, good portion of the game looked good. Like Garrett Wilson had a big game and they were able to get their stars going. And yet with all of those things aligning, it still ended up being a 20-point, outing for them, largely because of red zone woes. I mean, they couldn't convert a lot in this game, and that was a big problem. So it was just like even when things seemed to actually be like turning a corner and working well for this offense, at the end of the day, they only put up 20 points
Yeah.
and, didn't get the win that they desperately needed at home, mind you. Now they're 1-2 at home, and it's just, 2-4, not looking great for the New York Jets. And they got a Sunday night matchup coming up, so a little bit of a shorter week for them too, although not as short as, just a quick 1 o'clock Eastern time game on Sunday. But yeah, it's a good win for the Bills. I mean, obviously, this was a game that had a lot set up to be somewhat of a trap game or just a game where they could fall flat. But to your point, Josh Allen rebounded in a big way and did it with his wheels too, which is nice to see that he's still got that trick in his back pocket.
It was the battle for first place in the division. Bills won it. Whether you want to blame the kickers, whether Aaron Rodgers wants to blame the refs or his receiver, because he never takes responsibility for anything.
Yeah.
I truly think the other reason why the Jets
Brutal.
made that move this morning is because it's like Aaron Rodgers created such a shitstorm at the press conference that he was going to get reamed for. Everyone all morning long, all the national talk show hosts. You could just Colin Cowherd, Dan Patrick. I'm sure they're all just setting their day up for just being like, why is Aaron Rodgers, can he never just take responsibility for anything? He's such a dick. And then it's like, oh, they traded for Davante Adams. All right, now we have to change our turn.
Everything's all better. Now it's going to be Aaron Rodgers on Pat McAfee, as we saw earlier today. Having fun. Yeah. Doesn't even have to address throwing Mike Williams completely under the bus. We may be seeing another wide receiver trade coming down the pipe.
They said why Mike Williams was on the trading block. Did you see that?
Oh, no, I did. Like the team actually declared it.
It was leaked from his agent or something that apparently the Jets announced that Mike Williams is on the trade block. In case you didn't know who was running the organization.
Makes a lot of sense. All right, well, let's get into that big breaking news right after this. It's a few hours old, so I don't know if we can technically call it breaking news anymore. Although there's a loose window for that type of stuff. Davante Adams traded from the Las Vegas Raiders to the New York Jets for a third-round pick. It's a conditional third-round pick. It can become a second if Adams is a Pro Bowler this year, or if he is on the active roster for the championship game or Super Bowl. So either one of those met, it becomes a second-round pick. Obviously, a nice price tag there for the Vegas Raiders, while also dumping some of that cap space. And Davante Adams reunites with Aaron Rodgers. I'm skeptical, Mark, on how much this actually changes things for the Jets, because I just feel that there are a lot more issues. This doesn't help the offensive line. Yeah. They were still trying to get the ball out quick to, they had talented players already. Obviously, Davante Adams, though, is going to make some sort of difference on the offense, gives you another weapon to get the ball out to, another, player for defensive to account for. So in that regard, the Jets got better with this trade. How much better? I think that's still yet to be seen, of course.
Yeah. So part of what I wanted to do here is I'm pulling up the Jets schedule, right? So they have Sunday Night Football in Pittsburgh, and then you have Patriots, Texans, Cardinals, Colts. So if you look at that
decent slate,
if you look at that 5-game stretch at 2-4, we said it all off season. So I don't want to change our tune now, even though maybe in the AFC 9 wins might get you in now as we're looking at how things are kind of shaping out. Your goal has to be 10 wins, right? So if you're a Jets
they got to go
fan,
4-1.
If you're a Jets fan, you look at that and you say, how can we go 4-1 in this? And you look at that Patriots is a must win. The Cardinals is a must win. And then the Colts is a must win. And then you have to find a way to split the Steelers and the Texans. Obviously, the Texans is a lucky break. You get them at home on a Thursday night. Thursday nights always favor home teams on the short week. And then the Steelers, you're going to hopefully get the Davante Adams bump, right? He's already in New York. He's already practicing. He's going to play in that game, I would imagine. And so can you sit there and say, if you're a Jets fan right now, talk yourself into 4-1? You can. Will it actually happen? I don't think it will. I think the Jets are what I predict them to be, is like a borderline playoff team. I had them, I think, as the final team in. But I certainly wasn't predicting that to be Robert Saleh was fired and all of this chaos so far that has kind of surrounded them. Dan, for me, it's going to be really fun to watch. Sunday Night Football is going to be electric. You're going to watch Sunday Night Football anyways, but now there's an extra little added bonus to it. If it helps the Jets score 24, 27 points a game, then I think it will have a difference on it. And they could maybe get to 9-10 wins because this defense is good enough to hold teams to 20, 21 points. It's the offense we haven't felt like is good enough consistently to score 24, 27 points, 30 points a game for them to free up and win. I will say that the change in play caller last night, you could tell instantly. I can't think of the guy's name who they had calling plays.
Todd Downing.
Yeah, there you go. And you could just tell there was more motion, there was more movement. It looked less stagnant, and so that's a positive for the Jets. I don't know exactly the output. It's, the plus or minus. Does it help them win one extra game? Sure. If they had stability and they weren't in chaos when they still had their head coach, and they had just let the head coach do what he wanted to do, which was move Nat Hackett on, keep his own job, I think maybe I would be more excited about this team. But with the interim coach, with Aaron Rodgers seemingly running the show, I don't know if this moves the needle that much.
The offensive line is just too bad. It's really, really bad. I mean, that's going to be the way the Steelers have to win this game because they're outmatched in terms of personnel, offensively for sure. So that's going to be the way that they're going to have to win this game, is pressuring Aaron Rodgers and just taking advantage of that very weak offensive line. Some other news, Mark. We had another wide receiver trade. Amari Cooper traded to the Buffalo Bills. So both teams re-upping. Or I should say, upgrading their wide receiver core in this one. The Bills sending a 3rd and 7th round pick to the Browns, and they also get a 6th round pick in return from Cleveland. Another way for Cleveland to move some cap space around. Obviously, they're going nowhere this year with how poor of a start they've had. So probably a good deal for Cleveland. Although now, I mean, who's the wide receiver 1 in Cleveland? That's, yet to be seen. But Bills get a nice upgrade to their receiver core, which they obviously needed in this one. Overall thoughts on this acquisition?
I love it so much, Dan. I love it so much because when we talked about addition by subtraction with Stephon Diggs, we talked about the fact that it was getting the bad energy out of the room. And what we knew going into this would be like, yeah, they're going to be outmanned, but can Josh Allen make it work? And what we've seen so far through 5-6 games is that he can make it work, but overall the offense still really struggles to find its footing and to be consistent on third downs and to just, string some drives together to help Josh out. And when you add Amari Cooper, you're talking about one of the least diva star wide receivers of the last 20 years. He's right up there with Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, maybe Andre Johnson. Andre Johnson and Mike Evans were getting some fights, but definitely. they weren't divas, right? You know what I mean? A Reggie Wayne wasn't a diva. He's of that ilk, and it's just a perfect fit. He's going to be so pumped to not be in the mess that is Cleveland, to be on a competitive team, to be the quarterback who needs him and can play. I think
they needed a physical, his body size is like exactly what they're looking for that they didn't have in their receiver
Coleman's
core, right?
The tall 6'6", lengthy jump ball guy. Shakir is your, smaller in-cut route.
Shifty.
Yeah, he is your prototypical 6'1" possession receiver. And I just love this move so much. When you talk about what's the benefit for it, I think this is immediately puts the Bills back into that. Hey, I know they've lost to the Texans this year. I know they've and they lost to the Ravens. But to me, this immediately bumps them back up into no, they belong in that tier in the AFC. Really excited about this. Bills fans should be beaming today. They gave up really nothing to get them when you're talking about a team that's in win now mode. And so I think they gave up a 3rd and they swapped 6th. And
3rd and 7th, and then they get a 6th back. So
6th back. So I mean, what a win! What a win for Buffalo.
Not a big price to pay for a team with not that many holes.
And it really cucks the Jets, right? The rival Jets make the
Yeah.
move after you beat them in their home. Everyone's now talking about swinging the praise back at them. And then you just go, oh, actually, we're going to make the better,
We're
smarter
upgrading too. Yeah,
move. And it's just like,
exactly.
yeah, love the move. Love the move.
Love it. And then one final tidbit of news as we launch ourselves into our best wins, worst losses of the week. Tom Brady was approved by the NFL owners to
Yeah.
purchase a minority stake in the Las Vegas Raiders. I don't know what that's going to do for his broadcast career. I know this has been a talk of, multiple debates, both, in the offseason and stuff like that. But so far, it doesn't appear that there's going to be too much of a conflict. He might not be able to call Raiders games, and that would be it. But nonetheless, Tom Brady now officially an NFL owner, or part owner, I should at least say. All right, let's get into the. Oh, do you want to comment on that real quick? Okay.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. It's just like, well, I don't really know how this is all going to work, so it's just a wait and see.
I'm along for the ride. All right, Mark, I'll get us started here. The best win of the week, in my view, had to go to one team, and it's the Detroit Lions, because they destroyed the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, they put on an absolute clinic in this game, 47-9 drubbing of Dallas. Dallas goes to 3-3, a team that, the Lions might have, figured, okay, this is going to be a team we might have to contend with in the postseason. And not just the fact that they, destroyed I guess a withering Dallas Cowboys team at this point at their home venue. But it was also because at the point of the season where the Lions have gotten themselves to 4-1, they're keeping pace in the NFC North with the undefeated Minnesota Vikings. The Green Bay Packers are winning. The Bears are winning. This was an important game for the Lions because this was easily a game that the Lions could have lost and people wouldn't have necessarily faulted them for it. They're in Dallas. It's a game that, they've lost in the past, certainly could lose again. But instead, Jared Goff put on the Superman cape in this respect. And they got dominant efforts out of David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. And on top of it, just kind of hitting on all cylinders. They had, Amon-Ra St. Brown with a couple key catches in this one. Sam Laporta with a big touchdown catch, and Jameson Williams. They're getting the big plays, they're getting the short intermediate plays, they're getting the ground game going. Jared Goff efficiency all worked out well. Oh, and defensively, 2 interceptions of Dak Prescott, who looked terrible in this game, by the way. So this could be certainly a candidate for worst loss. I just thought everything looked so good for Detroit, and I think you got to feel really good about being 4-1, getting a road win like this at the time they did.
Yeah, I'm glad you picked this game. I didn't, because I just to me it's such a unique game from this weekend, in the sense that it is like this kind of sneaky revenge game. And no, it was just this sneaky revenge game. The Lions absolutely came out and they just absolutely whomped on Dallas. I'll say this: you covered pretty much everything with Detroit. It was a wall-to-wall victory. They were doing unique, crazy things with formations and putting linemen out wide. It was so much fun to watch. During the week, sneaky move during the week, they re-signed David Montgomery to an extension.
Yeah.
And they're paying him like still nothing, it feels like, compared to the big money contracts. And he's maybe the most important running back as far as fit, as you said, in the NFL. And Jared Goff was, again, after the bye week, remember the week before the bye 2 weeks ago, the last time Detroit played, he was perfect, literally. And then this game, he was almost perfect, literally. He's on a absolute heater. Obviously, Aiden Hutchinson is the only damper on this Lions win. He's out the rest of the season. Seems like it's clean breaks, though, and his surgery went well and he'll heal. But I mean, it was one of those like UFC type injuries, I call them, where the leg just turns into a noodle. And it's like absolutely horrific. So crushing. That sucks for the Lions. You now wonder. I mean,
he was on a
7.5 sacks
player of the year.
He still leads the league in sacks. Yeah. So you wonder if the Lions will make a move. That's my only thought about the Lions right now here, now that it was a whomping. They kicked their ass. They're a much better team than Dallas. The Lions, to me, are the absolute 1-1 tier of class in the NFC. Them and the Vikings have both absolutely looked head and shoulders above everyone else in the NFC this year.
Yeah.
Now you wonder, though, will they make a move? because they're in such a win now mode, and their defense seems now to be without a star. And I don't know if this team can win a Super Bowl without a star defender. Their offense is probably the best offense in the league. The Ravens might have something to say about that. As far as Dallas goes, Dan, I mean, I wrote down here, they have a bye this week, which they desperately need because Micah's been out. Their defense is beat up, but they just need to regroup. Like, they need to look at themselves in the mirror and be like, we're 3-3, and we just completely got outclassed by a team that we're going to have to go through to win a Super Bowl, to even get to a Super Bowl. And like, that's a demoralizing place to be as a fan base, right? You're a 12-win team 3 years in a row. You have high expectations. You have the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. And you say to yourself, we want to be competing in the NFC Championship game. Well, you have to go through Detroit or play Detroit in the NFC Championship game, and you just are not on Detroit's level at all. You're probably 2 levels below Detroit. And you lost that game at home in that fashion. So after the bye, Dan, they have the Niners, the Falcons, and the Eagles. 3-3 could turn to 3-6 really quickly for Dallas if they don't turn things around here. That is not an easy stretch post the bye. And so good luck. Good luck to Dallas, because they're going to be a story. Now, we're going to forget about them in a week from now. We'll be talking about football, and they'll be in the bye, so we'll forget. So put a pin in this right now. Dallas must win. Or at least a must compete, be in that game, be competitive in that game, have a chance to win that game against the Niners to kind of salvage their season as far as making their fans feel like, hey, this team is still capable of maybe winning this division and having any sort of chance in the playoffs.
I mean, they're one play away from being 2-4 right now. I mean, winning in Pittsburgh last week on the last second, basically. That's a tough spot to be in. The Cowboys, what we've known for so long, great regular season team, great at home. So far, they're 3-3 and they're 0-3 at home. This is not
their last 4 games
of even the last 5 years.
The last 4 games at home have all been historic blowout losses, going back to the playoff loss to Green Bay and this year. So it's ugly in Jerry's world right now. All right, my win of the week.
Who's your win?
My win of the week is the Ravens. We're going to the Ravens, Dan. I'll tell you why I liked the Ravens win this week so much. There was so much talk about Jane Daniels, right? And there was so much love for Jane Daniels, and rightfully so. And this was kind of like DC area, Baltimore, Commanders, Jane Daniels, passing of the torch game I was hearing, measuring stick game for Washington. And what we came out of this game was like, yes, the score looks close, right? 30-23. But if you watch this game, the Ravens were in control of this game the whole time. And for Baltimore, it's the first time this year they were in a wire-to-wire, were in control, not too high, not too low. Defense played good. Their defense still has some kinks to work out. It's not an elite Baltimore Ravens defense the way you think of them. But it was like, this was a complete game. We've seen them blow teams out. We've seen them lose weird games to the Raiders. But we haven't seen them yet have a wire-to-wire, extremely great performance, and we got that from them this time. And I'll also say, talking about the Commanders here now in this game as total, I'm not panicking if I'm the Commanders at all. You had a chance to go up in weight class against a team that has legitimate Super Bowl aspirations, and you lost. It's okay. Like that, it's okay. Their defense is not good enough right now for this Commanders team to be a legitimate multiple win playoff threat. Is this a Commanders team that could make the playoffs? Yes. I think we're starting to feel that vibe. Jaden's got that special air to him offensively. And the defense isn't like bottom 5, but the defense clearly is not good enough right now for you to have any expectations beyond, hey, you're in the playoffs, and that's a win for this season, when it certainly wasn't expected going into the season when you had the second overall pick to start the year. I want to quickly also just mention, I love Derrick Henry on the Ravens. I love him.
He's so good.
Dan, he's on pace for 1,900 plus yards and I think 20 touchdowns, which yes, he did run for 2,000 yards a couple years ago, but that would be his best season by far. Because I think the 2,000-yard season, he had like 10 or 12 touchdowns, something like that. I mean, this is at 30 years old, the best free agent signing in the NFL right now in this offseason when you look back on it, all the signings.
Yeah, and like obviously Lamar is the guy, but
He's
Derek
electric.
is so much of that offense,
Oh, he's
and
so
in
much fun.
such another dimension. That how do you contend with this team? They can beat you in so many different ways. And now that Mark Andrews is starting to get going, he had 2 touchdowns in this game. Or no, I'm sorry, he had 1 touchdown in this game, but starting to come alive. I mean, if Zay Flowers has another 9-catch game down the road with Mark Andrews playing the way he's been playing, and you got Derrick Henry back there, you've got Lamar Jackson, all of a sudden it's going to be almost impossible. It's a pick your poison type of situation for opposing defenses.
Yeah, it was a great win for Baltimore. I'm not, and I would think you'd agree, don't panic if you're the Commanders.
No, I mean, look, you're already playing with house money at this point. I don't think even the Commanders, if they were being honest, would not have imagined that they would be looking this good as a team. Now, maybe they would have said we could be 4-2, but how you're 4-2 is a big, difference. There could be a big
Absolutely.
difference in how those look, and it's looked pretty damn good. And with the way Jaden Daniels has been playing at an MVP level, you'll take this any day. I mean, honestly, if you're Washington and you're not really thinking about competing for a Super Bowl this year, you're fine with taking some losses. And I hate to say it because I do think that you plan at this point going to the playoffs, but it's not the worst to get another decent draft pick and like know that you've already got the quarterback in the future. You've got a lot in place. You got the coach right. I mean, I think that it's all bright right now for Washington.
That's the coach point is something I wanted to bring up. Dan Quinn not being in Dallas right now is obvious.
Yeah,
it's obvious. And Mike Zimmer has just been, now I know there's no Micah Parsons, but that defense has not lived and looked competitive without since Dan Quinn left. And Dan Quinn
coached Dan Quinn from Dallas, and it's in your division, and you make him your head coach, and now they're primed to beat the Cowboys pretty soon.
It's a great game, and I think that's why I went with the Ravens there. Just a great game, and they and if they would have lost that game, it would have been like, oh my God, is Jaden Daniels really better than Lamar? So it just like it stopped the headlines, and that's one of the reasons why it was my win of the week.
Fair enough. All right, your worst loss of the week.
Okay, so I'm going all the way back to Thursday night, Seattle. Again, Seattle was a team 3-0. Then you go on a 2-game skid, and you say to yourself, hey, we have a chance here now at home against our division rival who's coming into this game reeling. And after a bad loss to the Cardinals, below 500, and you have a chance to say, let's put our foot down. Let's get a W. Let's write this season. Let's show that we belong in the conversations with Detroit, with Vikings, with Green Bay as the primo in the NFC East and the NFC in total. And they just shit the bed. I mean, it was an ugly, ugly game for them. Brock Purdy just did anything and everything he wanted. Kudos to Purdy. It was almost my win of the week because they needed that too. Remember,
yeah, because it was a convincing win.
I know it was last Thursday, but all the talk Friday before, last week when we did the show, all the talk last week was, dude, Purdy, that was the first game that was like, he looked trash. Like he did not look good, low completion percentage, immobile, inaccurate, and they lost to the Cardinals. Like, I mean, it was an embarrassing loss. So for Purdy to respond with 3 touchdowns and running the ball too, scrambling for first downs, great victory for them, and just a devastating loss for Seattle because now if you're in Seattle and you're listening to talk radio on Friday morning, it's probably time to maybe trade a piece or two, go into the tank and reset. We like our young head coach, but Gino just wasn't sharp enough on the big stage in the big moment, and it's probably now time for us to pack this thing in. And that's tough, especially after a 3-0 start. They've now lost Seattle. At the time of that loss, they'd lost 3 games in 11 days. Just a brutal stretch of football for the Seattle Seahawks.
That's bad. That's bad. Yeah, no, that's a good candidate, and that was on my board as well because they were 3-2, looking to go to 4-2. beating the lowly 49ers. They could have put the 49ers at 2-4 on the season. I mean, you're talking about a total seismic shift in the division. And the Rams, with all their injuries, like this was an opportunity for the Seahawks to really step in and pounce and make some waves here in the NFC West. But instead, the 49ers came up big, 3 touchdowns, Brock Purdy, and the rest is history. So I think that's a really good call out by you for the worst loss. I'm going to go a different direction, and I'm going to go across the pond. And it's your Chicago Bears defeating the Jacksonville Jaguars. Worst loss. Low-hanging fruit, yes. And the Jaguars have been on this list already a couple times this year for the two of us. And I imagine this is probably going to be the last time they're on their list because they're just not going to matter anymore.
Yeah.
The Jacksonville Jaguars, their season ended in London, and they're going to have to hang around. I mean, hey, go check out, whatever you can, sightsees, do whatever you can.
Got the Patriots coming to town.
Yeah. Even winning this week, it's like, who cares? The Bears absolutely destroyed Jacksonville 35-16. Really didn't look competitive here at any point. 3 first half points for Jacksonville. Barely strung together some offensive performances in the second half. And now you're 1-5. Your season's over. Your head coach is likely
fired
at the end of the season, if not hanging on by a thread. I imagine they wouldn't want to fire him the week that they're still overseas, but I could very well see on the way back, saying that we're calling it quits, or maybe they're just going to tank the season with him and fire him. But I think his days are numbered, unfortunately. I like Doug Peterson a lot. He's won a Super Bowl, but clearly things have just not worked out. We've talked about it time and time again with Jacksonville. The offense is not clicking. The defense has been, really bad. And I thought they made some really nice, a really nice progress last week. And they had Evan Ingram back. He had a big game. Obviously, like they got him back into the mix. I thought Trevor looked okay in this game, honestly. But he's still missing some throw. It just, things are not working out. And so yeah, it was my worst loss because of what it meant for the team. It put a dagger in their season for them, and was the last opportunity for Jacksonville to really be on here. So calling them out in this one. But your Bears, this is an opportunity here really to talk about Caleb Williams and the Bears as well. 5 offensive touchdowns in back-to-back games for the first time since 1956. That has to just sound wonderful to a franchise and a fan of a franchise that has been without a quarterback that can produce that.
So I love this. I love that you picked this because I agree. I think that for Jacksonville at this point in time, like honestly, like you and I, it's like peel back the curtain. Like if we're talking off air stuff on the air, we don't have to worry about Jacksonville now until they if they can claw back to 500, then we'll start talking about them again, right? Like at this point for Jacksonville, yeah, like if in 5 weeks from now they are 5 and 6, like all right, okay, now we got it. Like they're alive. Yeah. Let's talk about them. Let's see. Let's give some critical thought on Jacksonville. But at this point, no. I mean, I expect them to win against the Patriots. I expect them to try to fight again to keep their season alive, and then we'll see from there. But yeah, Dan, I will say in defense of Trevor Lawrence, I agree with you. He was not horrible. Evan Ingram back is a huge piece for this offense. And he had 2 different receivers drop 2 touchdowns during this game.
Yeah, definitely.
And I mean,
and a couple more drops
not
that
bad
were
throws.
Yeah, yep.
Legit drops in the end zone. Like both times I'm watching the game going,
Yeah. Christian Kirk, Gabe Davis, and Brian Thomas all dropped big key passes, 2 for touchdowns there, as you said. Yeah.
Dude. And so you can only do so much. And then when you list that, you're like, wait a minute. That's kind of what he's dealing with right now. Christian Kirk, who's not a 1-1. He'd be a really nice 2. Gabe Davis, who's really a 3, like a gadget guy.
Just inconsistent, yeah.
And someone generic Thomas name, and then Evan Ingram comes back.
Hey, he's their first round rookie. He's actually been pretty good this year. All right, give him some.
I know, but it's just funny because
he
like
did drop
Thomas,
a touchdown pass. I mean,
Smith, Johnson. You know what I mean?
Just very very general. Junior,
Yeah. So, with Jacksonville, it's tough. We'll see. They have to win against the Patriots, and I think the Patriots, they would argue, hey, we want to beat Jacksonville too. You're starting your rookie quarterback now, so
Well,
that
and
game's
Drake May
good.
looked
Yeah,
good. Like, I mean,
we can get into that here in a bit.
yeah.
I'll say this about the Bears, right? So, two things. I've seen this a ton this week, and it's so funny. We're in the since part of the Chicago Bears. They're doing things now where literally when you talk to the experts, everything is since, because it's been so long for the Bears that everything is now since.
To do anything.
Yeah. I mean, listen, we know now that Caleb Williams truly is the rookie who came into the best spot for a rookie ever, because no rookie first overall quarterback has ever been 4-2 through the first 6 games. Number one overall pick. I'm not talking about like the first quarterback taken in the draft. The number one overall pick, who is a quarterback, has never been 4-2. Caleb Williams was 4-2. That's not me saying Caleb Williams is the best of these quarterbacks. Obviously, no. But we said this last year. The Bears put Caleb in a position to be good. It took 2.5 weeks to get going. And since the second half of that Texans game, he has been phenomenal. He has every week I check the stats and he's slowly climbing up, fighting out of that hole he dug himself in. Completion percentage, touchdowns, yards. And I mean, now you're starting to look, he's in the top 12. And it's like, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. Dan, what I love so much about the interception, when he threw the interception and it was a deep ball to DJ Moore, it crushed me because it was a surefire touchdown. But what I said to myself was, and I've heard this from other people too, so it's like, it's so funny to see the Bears media, like we're on the same page with this, the support of Caleb's. And it's because truly we don't have to make excuses for him. It's not like with Justin Fields and Mitch Trubisky. We're not making excuses. Now, part of that was that Mitch had a great team he came into, and Mitch couldn't rise above and eventually lead that great team. Justin did not have a great team, but even when Justin finally started to get weapons, he made too many of his own errors to where the blame was too much on him. You're dealing with a lot of that now, right? For Caleb, the interception to DJ Moore was bad, but it was bad in the sense that, listen, he took an extra second to wait to throw the ball, and he learned it's a rookie mistake. It's not like Sam Darnold's interceptions when he was rookie where I'm seeing ghosts.
Yeah.
Or Will Levis' interceptions where you're like, what the fuck was that, dude? It was like, dude, you got to throw that a second earlier. It's the NFL. They're closing so much quicker. And it's like, you learn from that. And after he did that, remember, the Jags were up 3-0 in this game. Trevor Lawrence had the ball, and it was a 7.5, 8-minute drive. I think I tweeted out, the Bears are never getting the ball back. And the Bears went into this game with missing 3 of their starting defensive backs, a starter on the defensive line, not a starter, but a rotation guy, and they lost their long snapper during this game.
Yep.
And so
Cole Kmet
during the start of this game was Bears 3-and-out, the Jaguars 8-minute drive and a field goal. And you're like, oh, this is ugly. They didn't score in the first half. The Bears scored 35 points, and they didn't score in the first quarter. Caleb Williams threw that horrible interception, and then he went on to throw 4 touchdowns after that. So he's responding in a way that I have never seen in my life. Not just a rookie Bears quarterback, but a Bears quarterback do consistently. Even with Jay would throw a bad interception and it'd be like, oh, here's the bad interception game. He'd throw 4 more to Dante Hall. Like this, he's doing something that we have not seen done in our lifetimes as Bears fans from the quarterback position. That is thrilling. And I know people are saying, but look who he's doing it against. I know. And again, that's why I'm not sitting here saying Bears are Super Bowl, Bears are the number 1 team in the NFC. They're not. If they beat the Lions, if they beat the Vikings, if they beat the Packers, they will have a chance to play all 3 of ththose teams 2 times from week 10 to week 17. It's going to be a freaking slog. I will reserve judgment at that point in time. But right now, I don't need to reserve judgment. Caleb Williams is the franchise quarterback. He can develop into the franchise quarterback. Will he still have bad games this year? Absolutely, probably. Will he still have great moments this year? I hope so. But that was so thrilling as a Bears fan to start slow, no points in the first half, bad interception, and we scored 35 points, and there was no defensive scores. There was no Devin Hester returning picks. It wasn't the defense pick 6. It was the offense that scored 35 points. And I know it's against the bad Jags, but they're a desperate team, and they are pros, and you're beat. And what's the mark of a solid or a good team? You beat down on bad teams. The Bears in 2 weeks in a row have beat down on bad teams. Thrilling stuff. And part of me is like, I hate that we're getting the bye week because we're rolling right now. But I just listened to all the injuries: Stevenson, Gordon, Pickens, Smith, Brisker. They all need to get healthy for this Bears team to have a chance to keep winning games. So the bye is coming at a good time in that regard. And I said it last week, I want the Keenan Allen game. We got the Keenan Allen game. Cole Kmet. I know people don't like to talk about Cole Kmet. Right now, he is a top 3 tight end in the NFL. The stats bear it out. The fantasy stats bear it out. The play, just watching it, bears it out. And remember, I bitched and moaned after week 1 after that scrape by win. Cole Kmet had less snaps than Gerald Everett. Shane Waldron, I give him a ton of credit. From week 1 to where we are now through week 6, he is evolving. He's not just going, this is my game plan. I'm Mike Martz. We're trading Greg Olsen. No. He is listening to his players. He's evolving. He's getting better. So all of that is a huge positive. So there you go. There's my 10 minutes on the Bears.
I love it. Yeah, making Cole Kmet a part of the offense is absolutely something they needed to do, even if they have, several other playmakers on that team to get the ball to. You still got to factor in Cole Kmet whenever you can.
And don't worry right now about the Bears, who they're playing, because they will play tough teams. We have 2 games against the Vikings, 2 games against the Packers, 2 games against the Lions from week 10 to week 18.
Yeah.
6 out of those last 8 games are division. So we're going to know. We're going to know all about these teams when it's all said and done. Let's not write the story before it's written. Let's watch it play out and go from there.
And as you said, there's something to be said for being able to put the dagger in to teams. Like, there's a lot of teams could take things for granted, take a 20-7 lead and watch it evaporate. Instead, the Bears were able to continue to put pressure on the Jacksonville Jaguars, and that's why it turned into being such a blowout win that it was. All right, let's get to the Packers beating down on the Arizona Cardinals, who had looked feisty for several parts of the season, but not in this game. Packers win 34-13 handily. Jordan Love, 4 touchdowns in this game. Looked really good. Had the 1 interception, but other than that, was looking good. Tough game for Kyler Murray, really. He didn't throw any picks or anything like that, but just wasn't really connecting at all. I thought this I didn't think the Packers looked all that amazing in this game. You had Romeo Doubs with conduct beneficial to the team for this game. Nice. 2 touchdown grabs for him. But I thought this said more about, just Arizona's, they were just, it was weird. It was kind of like they just weren't connecting on several drives that ended prematurely when they should have. And credit goes to the Packers. I mean, they're a solid team. They're definitely a solid team. They're 4-2. Jordan Love looks fully healthy at this point. They're doing it without needing Josh Jacobs to be like the bell cow guy. And I think that's been pretty important because they had leaned on guys like Aaron Jones in the past and needed to have that really solid running game. Now, they still ran for 179 yards as a team, but they're getting that production across a lot of players. So if they can keep that going, then I think they're going to create, form a well-rounded unit for the rest of this year. But I didn't take a whole lot from the Packers from this game is basically what I'm saying. I didn't feel like, this is a powerhouse team after this win, despite the 21-point victory. But maybe that's just me.
Well, they were up 24-0. And then in the second half, the Cardinals' drives in the second half were 3 fumbles and a punt. So they beat shit out of the Cardinals. Now, is that impressive? I don't know. The Cardinals right now are the definition of any given Sunday. You can beat the Niners and then get embarrassed the next week. So I don't know what to say as far as that goes. But I will say this about the Packers, and I hate to say it. Jordan Love, off of play action and fading back, right now he's in his athletic prime. He's mature. And Dan, he's missed 2 games, and he is second place for touchdown passes. Now, he's also thrown a bunch of picks. And that's why it's weird. He is literally like 50% Brett Favre, 50% Aaron Rodgers. It's like he has the body and style of Aaron, but the brain of Brett, where he's like, fuck it, and I don't care if I throw picks. This Packers team is very good. They also lead the league in takeaways. All 4 NFC North teams are their 4 leading teams in the NFL for point differential. That's an insane stat. The 4 best teams in the NFL for point differential are the Lions, the Vikings, the Packers, and the Bears.
It's insane.
It's insane.
No, it is the best division in football. There's no doubt about it.
And again, part of that is they haven't played each other yet. The Packers are 4th in division because they are 0-1 against the Vikings. But, Dan, the Green Bay is a plus 41, Chicago plus 47, Detroit a plus 60, Minnesota plus 63. The next closest is your Steelers. They're 5th at a plus 38. These 4 teams, they haven't played really each other yet. It's going to be a bloodbath late in the season, but Green Bay is very good. I wrote down Jordan Love is a problem. He's a problem. He's living up to the contract.
I mean, perhaps I'm underestimating Green Bay. There's something about them where when I look at the great NFC teams right now, I don't feel that the Packers can run through that gauntlet.
Quickly, who would you put above the Packers in the NFC?
I mean, you're probably not
Vikings and Lions.
I still think
Vikings and Lions.
The Vikings and the Lions for sure. And then, I mean, I'd have to check my power rankings to see if I actually, no
NFC East teams, right? You wouldn't put the line.
No, I wouldn't put. No, it's really I'm
the
still
NFC
high
West,
on the Niners.
So you'd put the Niners above. That's fine.
I would put the Niners ahead of them. I just want to make sure that I actually reflected that in the.
Okay, so no other NFC West teams though.
That's correct.
And then would you put the Bears ahead of them or no?
I would. Yeah. I did the rankings are coming out tomorrow, so I'm not going to give away a bunch, but I do have the Bears and the Niners ahead of the 49ers in the rankings that are coming out tomorrow on for
plus the Lions and the Vikings.
Sakes.
So you have them as your 5th best NFC team.
I do. And like I said, I'm just being too low on them. It's possible. Yeah. I think the Bears are a more complete team. I think
the Bears have. I will 49ers, say this, the Bears are more. It's wild, but the Bears are a more veteran team. And they have more established names. The Packers, that is the one thing about them that I think is really weird, is that they drafted all these guys. So it's like every single time you watch the Packers play, you're like, who the fuck is that guy? Like, and he's a stud. And it's like, oh, well, yeah, they just found him in the 4th round, and that's what Green Bay does. Josh Jacobs is like the one name, and it's like, oh, yeah, we all know that in the free agent signing. So I have the Packers still ahead of Chicago. I have them as the 3rd best team in the NFC right now. And I partially they are my boogeyman, and Jordan Love looks good. He turns the ball over, but it doesn't hurt them the way it hurts other teams. We'll see. They did lose to the Vikings, and it was the Vikings, it was a close game, but the Vikings, if you go back and watch the game, it felt like they were really in control for portions, and they beat up on Jordan Love. So you have that as a measuring stick, but it's just the Packers, man. They're scary.
Yeah, they are. The Colts beat the Titans 20-17. Are you starting to get to the feeling that they're going to, like, the Titans might have to look on for, yes. But that the Titans might have to consider thinking about what they're going to do at quarterback.
Well, listen, Will Levis was not.
I'm not jumping off the Will Levis
16
train.
of 27 for 95 yards. That is ugly. That's Josh Rosen. That's Josh Rosen. It's just
it's so weird because he threw 4 touchdowns in like his first or second start last year. And we're like, okay. And we're like, okay, like he's got some tools. And I don't think we've seen that splash literally since.
Dan, well, here's my take on this game. So I didn't watch this game, but I today I went and watched the 20-minute highlight,
the recap,
that ESPN, that the NFL does on their YouTube channel. And I watched every single, and I looked through everything, and I when I was watching the Titans, I kept saying to myself, he's now scared to make a mistake, because now he's like, oh shit, if I make the Will Levis mistake, they're gonna pull me. And so that's now why you're getting 16 of 27 for 95 yards. He's not pushing the ball. He was not pushing the ball aggressively.
Yeah, and 3 carries for 15. Like, the guy is super athletic, and
Yeah.
he's not running the football
And
either.
yet you have receivers in Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins like, push the ball. Like, let's get the ball downfield. So
Yeah, Calvin Ridley came out and was, like, basically just called him out and just said, like, I can't do everything. I mean,
yeah.
I'm,
If I could give him one
Yeah.
piece of advice, I'd be like, dude, go down swinging. Don't lose your career putting up a stat line that looks like you're Bryce
Being
Young.
conservative.
You are bigger and stronger and can make all the throws. Just don't turn it over. Like, if you throw a pick, it's one thing, but don't have the costly fumbles and the end zone picks, right? So yeah, listen, the Titans, again, I feel like the Jags. Let's get back in with them if they make a drastic move, or if they at this point in time, can find a way to scrap back to 500. The Colts are interesting because I said it after week 1, Anthony Richardson could be a 5-year starter for them. I think there's something to the fact that Anthony Richardson is probably still the Colts' future. But right now, this Colts team is a playoff caliber team with Joe Flacco starting. Like, I think
no Jonathan Taylor in this game, and it's a division.
They're not a playoff caliber team with Anthony Richardson starting.
Yeah.
So that leaves you in a huge dilemma, right? Like, what do you do? And if you're a fan, I think still the end game is you're not beating Patrick Mahomes. You're not beating Lamar Jackson, right? You're not
beating CJ Stroud, most likely.
You're not making it out of the AFC. So a wild card berth, just like the Browns had last year and with Joe Flacco, or by the end of the year, clarity on your quarterback. Clarity on the quarterback, but I will say I think we both agree right now this Colts team could make the playoffs if Joe Flacco starts the rest of the year. I don't think that's going to happen. They're going to go back to Richardson. They have to. But again, if I was Shane Steichen, I would not at all protect Anthony Richardson. It is all gas, no brakes. And this kid has to earn this job because at this point in time, the Colts are a really desirable landing spot for a free agent quarterback. If the Dolphins move on from Tua, if the Saints move on from Derek Carr, if the Seattle moves on from Geno, the Colts are the perfect like Baker Buccaneers landing spot. They have talent. This is a win. This is a team that can be a nasty wild card team if you have consistent, solid quarterback play. We're seeing that now with Joe Flacco.
Yeah, no question. I agree with you on most fronts there. Man, how about Baker Mayfield, huh? 4 touchdowns as the Buccaneers.
That game was drunk.
Destroy the Saints, 51-27. It was Tampa coming out early, 17-0 lead, and then New Orleans
they were down
a massive second quarter and take the lead at the half, and then it was all Bucks the rest of the way. In a really, like you said, a very drunk game. Baker Mayfield did throw 3 picks, so I'm not crowning the guy here, but at the same time, I mean, it's just got to give credit to Todd Bowles, really, man. He's done such a better job with this team than I thought he would.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's I think he plays a big role in how Baker has played. They just have good game plans, and Baker, he's not killing the team. And in fact, in many regards, he's the reason they're winning in a lot of ways. And they're just leaning on, they had Rachaad White, who was a, breakout running back last year, and he's been hurt. And like, they haven't really needed to lean on him. Instead, you got guys like Sean Tucker and the rookie Bucky Irving that come in and have big moments. Tampa's just a really solid team, man. They are definitely deserving of being in the driver's seat for this division right now. And it's going to be a fun race, actually, to watch them and the Falcons most likely battle back and forth the rest of the year.
Yeah, that loss to Denver is going to really haunt them. They beat the Lions. That's a great win on the resume if you're doing kind of like the BCS, you know what I mean, where you're the computer rankings, where it's like, okay, well, quality win.
How do you weight that? Yeah.
Bad loss. They should have beat Atlanta, but Atlanta snuck out that win at home. Listen, I give them a ton of fight and credit for this game. Again, you go up big early. You get all over the rookie quarterback, and then they storm back, and they could have folded. But no, Baker has got the chutzpah, he's got it all, and they're a fun team to watch right now. I think, to me, the Bucks. Listen. I picked them to win this division. I'm going to stick with that right now. I still think when it's all said and done, when the dust settles, when we are at week 18, the Tampa Bay Bucs will win the NFC South, and they will be absolutely a handful. Every wild card team's going to look at that and go, shit.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. No,
you got to
you're
go
not
to
gonna wanna
Tampa
face
Bay
them.
and deal with a team that, again, just feels like they have nothing to lose because their quarterback is playing inspiring football. I'll ask you this question. I know my answer to it, so I want to know your answer. Should the Saints trade Derek Carr? And if they do trade Derek Carr, where would you like to see Derek Carr end up?
I mean, yeah, I would say yes, because I actually think Spencer Rattler performed fairly well, and I think they've got two young quarterbacks that, Derek Carr is not going to be the future of this team. I don't know how long Derek Carr's going to play. He's probably got 5 years left in the league. Certainly, if not as a starter, as a premier backup. But where I'd want him to go, that is an interesting question because
So
there are
think about
some.
that, and
Yeah,
I'll answer the first part of my question for this. All right.
yeah, go for it.
So I absolutely think they should trade Derek Carr and get whatever you can. You remember you signed him to a 3-year big deal. This is year 2 of that deal. You can move the money around. Dennis Allen and him, this was an experiment when they got him. He had Dennis Allen before. They were moving on from Sean Payton. It was trying to be like, let's go. Let's try to, this is our win now mode. Clearly last year was a failure. This year's a failure. This team is not winning anything this year. So that's why you should trade Derek Carr, because you're going to fire your coach and you're going to, and you're not going to have Derek Carr starting next year. And at this point in time, you'd rather just see what the kid has in Spencer Rattler. And if he loses a bunch of games, then that only helps you as well, right? You also got Chris Olave injured in this game. That sucks for them. Like, so let him rest. You know what I mean? He's a star. You have Rashid Shaheed. He's a star. You have stars on this team. You have some really nice pieces. So let's start, kind of chipping away at this, add some draft picks to this, and move on. Where do you think? Where would you like to see Derek Carr go? So I have an answer that I'd love to see Derek Carr end up in, and I want to see if you're thinking on my same wavelength.
Yeah, so obviously, just like thinking off the cuff here, the first team that comes to mind is Miami because I do think that Tua, while he's probably going to play, at some point later this season, Derek Carr would be the perfect locker room guy for that. I don't know how much of a system fit he is, but at the same time, there's only so many teams in the league that really would need some sort of trade like this. And so I'm trying to think a little out of the box with that one, and also just some insurance for the potential Tua injury 5.0 that may come down the road. You could have a guy that can kind of resurrect your season, Derek Carr, for the next month, and then take a back seat and be your go-to guy, or maybe he just, ships off and goes somewhere else next year. But I think he would be a pretty cheap price. So that's my instant thought.
So Miami was my second team, and I agree with everything you said there. My gut tells me, because and especially Miami announced it already, that they're going back to Tua this year. My gut tells me Miami's going to draft a quarterback in the first round next year or the second round and be like, hey, Tua, listen, you're on this big deal. You're our starter, but we have to start investing in the backup, right? We're not going to re-sign you. Like, this is it. We're going to let you're our quarterback, right? You can win with you now, but we have to figure out the future and then on the cheap, right? So that's what my gut tells me, Miami. It wouldn't shock me if they also, though, in the offseason, just picked up a Derek Carr as opposed to drafting a quarterback and said, just in case, wink, wink, we have someone who we really believe in and not Skylar Thompson. Which shame on Miami for having Skylar Thompson anyways. I mean, I know he was healthy all last year, Tua, but that's a shame on you. And then finally, but my answer is Cleveland. I think now maybe because the Amari Cooper trade
afford anything.
Because the Amari Cooper trade, maybe now they're not trying to win, and maybe they're looking at let's fucking fold and let's just go into the tanker with Deshaun, and we can draft Deshaun's replacement because that's the best way to go. But I do think that Cleveland's defense is so win now with the pieces it has. When Nick Chubb gets back, Njoku,
interesting.
At least if you trade for Derek Carr, you say, hey, we're going to bench you and we're going to move on from you however way, shape, or form we can. And we just want to have competitive football. And once again, prove that Kevin Stefanski's our guy. Now, I know Jameis is there, but they don't owe Jameis anything. And so that was my thought is that you say, hey, throw him back to Cleveland. And
there's not much of an upgrade from Jameis to Derek Carr, though, I think, at this point. I mean, there is an upgrade. But
yeah, true. But I also just think like if you're Stefanski, you might argue, oh, if I could get Derek Carr for 2 years for this window here now, well, we're screwed with the cap and we can't really do much.
Yeah,
then I'd do it.
No, I would love it. I would just like to see the fires that get started. Because
I know, but Cleveland's just on such a downward trajectory right now. They may end up with the first overall pick just because
they might. Yeah, no, that's very true. I skipped over the Texans beating the Patriots 41-21. We saw Drake May, get
Will
his
Anderson look great.
Yeah, he did. And Drake May, had his moments in this game for sure. He had his welcome to the NFL rookie moments as well. But man, he had a great touchdown pass. That was a beautiful throw right in the bucket. And it was
his first touchdown pass was a dart.
It was the 51-yard or the 40+
on a
yard touchdown.
It was his first touchdown pass.
That pass traveled further than any New England Patriots pass since Tom Brady.
I mean,
was there.
So. He looked like Justin Herbert. I mean, like seriously, like there were moments I'm like that.
That's a fair comparison.
I didn't watch the game, but I watched all of that so I could watch him. And there were times I'm like, dude, that looks like Herbert. The difference is I don't think he has as much of a cannon. Like Herbert's balls, like sometimes you're like, dude, it's a 10-yard like dig. Like take 10 miles an hour off the ball with Herbert.
Yeah, right.
So I think May actually has a little more touch, and it's maybe just because he's just not as strong as Herbert. But stance, height, the number 10, the bounce in his step. Oh yeah, it looks like Herbert.
Look a little like Herbert for sure. But
the
Texans still obviously
in this draft class, and you have Drake May, who kind of looks like Justin Herbert. You have Jaden Daniels, who kind of looks like Lamar Jackson. You have Caleb Williams, who kind of looks like Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, it is interesting. It's almost like there's a mold of quarterback that's a good to follow. The Eagles win 20-16 unconvincingly over the Cleveland Browns. What a shitty game all around. It wasn't very good. But Jalen Hurts came through for the team when it mattered most and wins this one. Nick Sirianni did not come through for the team, and
he's the talk.
It's so bad, man. It's crazy. I don't think I've ever seen this type of behavior from a head coach in this manner. Like I've seen, we've seen the Bill Parcells get real chippy with people, and but Sirianni does so in a way where it's almost like he's just trying to be a player. And it's weird.
I would have fired
yelling at fans.
I would have fired him. I would have fired him after the game. I would have fired him after the game.
It was a bad press conference, man.
And then bringing the kids in the press conference was a strategic scumbag move.
What doesn't he do that most? Like in his defense, I think he does that a lot.
Oh, see, I didn't hear that. I didn't hear that, so I don't know.
I've seen it a lot. I don't watch all of his press conferences, so I don't know if it's a common thing. But I've definitely seen in the past he's had his kids there.
Dan,
but nonetheless, it was weird.
I firmly stand by this. I really think Philly would be better off if you fired him and you made Vic Fangio the interim head coach, the defensive guy. He's been a head coach before. Let him handle the rest of the season, and let Kellen Moore. He can look at Kellen Moore and just say, "Do what you got to do on offense, and just do what you got to do."
Or bring in Vrabel, man. Bill Belichick.
Well, I mean, that would be epic if they did. But as far as they unlike the Jets, they have the structure for like someone who you could nominate to be your head coach and to run the organization.
Good destination.
Listen, not a good win, ugly win,
no.
And you barely beat the Browns, and he's celebrating and yelling at the fans. The storyline is the Browns are poop, and Nick Sirianni is probably my least favorite coach in the NFL. And if I was an Eagles fan, I'd be tweeting every day #fire Sirianni. I wouldn't stand for it. I don't want him to coach the rest of the season if I'm an Eagles fan. Now, as a Bears
there's
fan,
just been too many instances.
Let them implode, fine. But I don't like. He's an idiot. He's a scumbag.
Yeah. And the Brown season is it was basically over, the last couple weeks, but it's officially over now, right? I mean, it's dead in the water.
And like trading Amari Cooper to me signifies as well I truly now think they're going to start to show watching the rest of the year, and they're just going to lose.
Yeah,
And they're going to
yeah.
say, Deshaun, you went 3-14. We're picking number 1 overall, and we're just drafting your replacement, and we're going to bench you,
Yeah.
and you're going to be the
Hey,
most
trade
expensive.
Myles Garrett too. I mean, like honestly, just acquire everything for the future. Do a total rebuild. I honestly think this team has been in purgatory for like 10 years. They've been in
Well,
this like,
no.
well, with Johnny
It's
Manziel, like we have
no.
pieces and like
I
that can
look at
work
the
out.
Baker era on. Like Baker got him in the playoffs, and then got him back to the playoffs. And it's like in the last 5 years, it's like the window is open, right? And now it feels very shut.
But now things are falling apart. I think you break it down to it's ripping the Band-Aid essentially.
I just think
because this is going in the wrong direction.
No, I know, but I wouldn't trade Myles Garrett. That's just me. You need good players to win, and Myles Garrett's in his prime. And I know maybe you could say, well, you're wasting him, but you see how teams can go 0
They gave
to
up
first.
picks though. They don't have picks.
Well, they're getting some back. They got Amari Cooper.
They're
They got picks. Like
get
picks for other guys, not Myles Garrett.
Yeah.
Dan, you know, first to worst to first. Like I'm not saying it will happen in that division, but Myles Garrett, the Browns, like Joe Thomas, one of the top tackles of all time. Like Myles Garrett should be a Brown and should retire a Brown. Like that. Don't be dumb. Like that's what I hate about the Bears, like Roquan Smith, Greg Olsen. I look at when organizations do it, letting go of Khalil Mack again. Like when you get an all-time great player, figure it out. Win now.
Pay your guys. Yeah.
Even if you have to lose for one season to then win now, like figure it out. Don't let go of all-time great players.
I get it. It's just they've made their bed and now they need to dig themselves out of it, and it's going to require some extreme situations. The Chargers beat the Broncos, a good win for LA as this was close.
Justin Herbert
23-16 the final though.
He looked healthy. That's the most important thing. Then they ran J.K. Dobbins like 24 plus, I think, something like that. So you love to see the Chargers got back to that game plan. This is how Chargers games are going to look. They're not going to be pretty. Justin Herbert, if you look at the stats for quarterbacks who've started 6 games, he's basically bottom 3 in all stats for quarterbacks who played. And he's only played 5 because of the bye. But I was looking at it. He's not putting up gaudy numbers. But again, it's winning football. And that's what we like to see. I will also say, if I look at my notes on this, I knew I had one other thing to say on this. Bo Nix in the first half was one of the worst first halves of football I've seen out of quarterbacking in a long time. Now, I know I'm noted Bo Nix hater, but Dan, like, talk about growing pains, right? Like that is, and again, it just makes defense. It just makes you wonder. Again, if you're a Broncos fan, like we didn't do the right thing. Like again, it just was not the right decision, maybe, to get a guy who's at best the 4th best quarterback in his division. Depending on what the Raiders do, because the Raiders looks like all in on a draft pick as well. Chargers, I think Rashawn Slater got injured again for a little bit. Like that's John Harbaugh got injured. I mean, Jim Harbaugh got injured.
That was crazy.
The heart thing, but he's apparently okay. Good win for the Chargers and the Broncos. Listen, when they're going to be like this all year, they're an any given Sunday team, kind of like the Cardinals. Like maybe they'll show up, and if Patrick Surtain balls out, they can steal a game, but otherwise they're going to lose.
Steelers win 32-13 over the Raiders in Vegas. This game was way closer than I think the score actually indicates. Like honestly, Pittsburgh didn't play terribly well in this game, especially on offense. Raiders really hurt themselves on several occasions with really key penalties that ended up turning into points for Pittsburgh. And Justin Fields had a nice day running the football again. Like he does have that X factor in his wheelhouse, and it bails them out at times. So look, I mean, I'm not gonna, cry over, a 21-point victory. It was a convincing one, and we don't get too many of those. So it was nice to see that. But this performance, Mark, has now, opened the door even more. And now we're getting reports from Tom Pelissero, even though Mike Tomlin had his press conference earlier today. He said that both are going to practice. He's going to let whatever happens this week kind of determine who he goes with on Sunday. So not a ringing endorsement for Justin Fields, not naming him the starter, clearly opening that door for Russell. Minutes after his press conference, Tom Pelissero reports that Russell Wilson is going to be running with the ones in practice this week. And if all goes well, he's going to be the starter. I don't know if this, and I don't necessarily think this is the right move, but I do understand it because one, I know Mike Tomlin, and Mike Tomlin brought Russell Wilson in with the idea of being the starting quarterback. And so now that Russell is finally healthy and he has the opportunity to see what this team looks like with Russ, I understand it. But Mike Tomlin talks about it's hard to get on a moving train. Well, you're inserting Russ, who hasn't had NFL action now in a year. And
yeah, because he was benched at the end of last year. I mean, it's been a long time.
I mean, you're going to put him in on a Sunday night against a really good defense in the Jets, in a game that's pretty important, I would say, when Justin Fields is 4-2 as your starting quarterback. So
the Jets' run defense has been the weakest part of the Jets. Otherwise, very good defense,
right? And they're obviously gonna have packages in. Like I think we're gonna see Justin Fields, even if Russell Wilson's the starter the rest of the way. I think we're gonna see a decent amount of Fields. Like he's gonna get playing time every game, I think. But that's just the pause I have is like, I know he hasn't been good as a passer this year, really. I mean, there have been, he had a really bad pick that they got lucky, got called back. And it's just not clicking. Like they're not finding the open receivers, And so I think that's something that maybe Russell will give them, but Russell also isn't going to give them the bailing out of the pocket and being able to turn a 5-yard loss into a 15-yard gain. So,
I mean, they outscored the Raiders 20-6 in the second half. I mean,
no, it was good.
They won the game after halftime, and I'll say this: the only thing that makes sense to me is one of two things. Either A, Tomlin is now playing that whole, we're going to make the Jets prepare for both, you know what I mean? And then he's just going to start Justin Fields. Or he is saying to himself, and he's had internal conversations, listen, he's 4-2. The locker room loves him. We all love him. I love him. We're going to go with Russ because we have to, because his agent is chirping at us. It was in his contract that he's the starter. The owner might be chirping at us, whatever the outside forces are, right? We're going to go to Russ. We'll give him the start. And if he loses, as soon as he loses, we can be like, oh, yeah, we're going back to the kid. Like he was 4-2, right? Like he's built up enough credibility to be like, I can go back to Justin Fields, right? It's kind of a win-win for Tomlin in that way.
It's much easier. Yeah, if it happened in the reverse, it was going to be difficult.
Yeah, if Russ balls out and wins this game, then he'd be like, hey, listen, we're going to stay with the hot hand. This is why we brought Russ in, and we appreciate Justin. He's an all-world teammate, and he's our 2, and he's ready to go if needed. And then if Russ goes on a 3-game losing streak and looks bad, like we're going back to Justin. He was, you know what I mean? And he's going to bail us out of this, blah, 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 blah. So I hate it for Justin because I think Justin is overall playing well enough to deserve the job and to just keep the job.
I agree.
But I do think for the Pittsburgh Steelers organization, it gives them the most flexibility to be able to go back to Justin if things don't work out.
Because and they have a guy in Justin who can handle this type of thing. He's super
Justin's
mature,
a calm-headed,
like in the locker room. Like he will handle this well.
What will George Pickens put on his eye black as soon as Russell Wilson starts airmailing him?
Yeah, exactly.
The best thing Russell Wilson could do is just throw to George Pickens 20 times.
Yeah. And Pat Freiermuth. They need to get Freiermuth more involved. Like that's the thing that's bugging me is they're not getting these guys the ball early enough in games, and then they're forcing stuff later. And it's
Sunday Night Football. It's gonna be a great game, dude.
But it should be. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm worried. Like
it's like a must win for both teams. A must win for both teams.
The Steelers got to avoid Davante Adams this past week because he was hurt, and now of course they have to play him next week. So go figure. Falcons destroy the Panthers. Not much new there, but I do feel like this is a good win for the Falcons nonetheless. Because
if the season ended today, the Falcons would be the 1 seed. Not the 1 seed in the NFC, but they'd win the division.
Yes,
and they would. I think be the 2
they'd be hosting
seed.
a game.
Or no, I think they'd be the 3 seed in the NFC. So like they're right now they're right now absolutely. Listen, they've won 3 games in a row, the Falcons, and it was against their division. They beat the Bucks, they beat the Saints, they beat the Panthers. That's a hell of a stretch. So
It is.
kudos to them.
Yeah.
Even though they shouldn't have beat the Bucks, that Saints game was iffy. Like, like you come out and beat the Panthers. Can I ask you this question about the Panthers at this point in time? Like, just play Bryce Young or trade him, right? Like,
yeah, I agree. No, yeah,
like,
yeah.
You're
1-5.
You were 0-2. You make the change to try to save the season. Now you're 1-5. The season's dead. So now either play the kid or trade the kid.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think so too. I mean, you got to get him more reps, and the pressure's not there right now for the Panthers.
Play the kid or trade the
just
kid.
go out and play. Yeah. Just go play football. I totally agree with you. Final game is the Bengals beating the New York Giants 17-7. Not as convincing of a win as you'd like, but it did also feel like the Bengals were in control for the majority of this game. And Tyrone Tracy ran really well for the Giants.
Yeah.
And Joe Burrow had that nice long touchdown run that was almost like comical to see because we're just not used to that from Joe Burrow.
Wild.
But that was pretty impressive. But yeah, I mean, overall the Bengals, they're not a good enough complete team, I feel, to like be a scary team. Their offense is really good, and Joe Burrow is really good, and they can do a lot. But if the New York Giants, they have the same record as the New York Giants right now after beating the Giants. They're both 2-4.
This game was in New York, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And then 24 hours later, Monday Night Football is in New York.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to see the stadium time lapse of that. I want to see the changeover. I guess I don't have to do much. I got to just change the end zones, but that's interesting.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. That's a good point.
Yeah, Dan, I agree with you 100%. My only thing I would add to that is that if you're a Bengals fan, I think you're pumped about this win because your defense has been so bad that you're like, hey, at least we didn't give up 7 points. Well, at least we didn't give up 20 plus to the Giants, right? Like maybe that. Now your offense stunk.
I mean, it's true. Yeah,
it wasn't great, and Joe Burrow wasn't great. But you can say, hey, we won a game in a brawl fashion. We haven't seen that yet. So we saw something from the Bengals we haven't seen yet this year. They were in a bar fight and they won. So I would take that as a positive. And again, if you're a diehard Bengals fan, you just have to look tunnel vision 1 week at a time. Can we chip away? Can we get back to 500? Can the Bengals be 6-6 at some point in time this year? If they can, well, then if you look at the wild card in the AFC, the division winners, I think we pretty much feel like we know, right? It's like Bills, Texans, Chiefs, and who am I missing? Bills, Texans, Chiefs, and Ravens.
Like just the other, the Ravens for sure.
Bills, Texans, Chiefs, Ravens, right? So then you're like, all right, there's 3 other teams who can make the playoffs. Why can't the Bengals still be one of those teams? I mean, you look around, you're like, Miami is weird. The Patriots are dead. The Steelers have quarterback questions, and offensively, we don't know where they're going to be at. Obviously, the Bengals are a part of that. The Browns are dead. The Broncos and the Raiders are the Chargers are feisty. The AFC South is the Texans and then the Colts if they stick with Joe Flacco. So the wild card spots in the AFC feel very open as of right now at 6:46 Central Time on this October 15th. So
next 3 games, Browns, Eagles, Raiders, like that. Those are winnable games.
Oh yeah.
You could theoretically be looking at it and saying you're 5-4 after that. And then
if you are, you're alive and the Chiefs are sweating.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. 100%. Well, that'll do it, Mark. That's week 6 in a nutshell.
Anything else?
I think so.
Dan, I'll say this. I think what's crazy is we're at that point of the season now where you truly feel like teams are coming alive and like there's starting to be some separation. We talked about with those NFC teams. Right now, though, I will just say this. I think that the race in the NFC North. You have then the playoff race we just talked about in the AFC wild card. There's some things right now that are so unpredictable. And if you're going to sit here and try to say like, what's going to happen, I don't trust it at all. I don't trust it at all.
Yeah, no, it's always a toss up around this time of year, but yeah, this year especially a lot of weird things already happening. So, all right, well, excited for a week 7 slate. You get to relax all weekend. Your Bears are they can't hurt you this weekend. They also can't provide you with.
But they flexed me. Did you see they flexed me for week 8? Bears Commanders got flexed to the CBS Jim Nantz Tony Romo. It was
very nice.
Bears Commanders was noon slate. It got flexed to the 325.
That'll be exciting. Good stuff. I'm looking forward to that game. That'll be fun.
Godspeed.
And Nantz Romo.
I will say this. This today versus Saturday, I feel more confident for that game than I did on Saturday.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. I think I would take the Bears to win that game as of right now, just the way that they're playing.
I really want them to win that game.
Their defense is good enough. The Washington's defense, that's the key. Chicago's defense can at least contend. I don't know about.
It's a Montez Sweat revenge game, and Montez Sweat has been quite quiet this year. Now he's getting a lot of the doubles, so he's letting other guys feast. But that's my early preview. Montez Sweat game.
Good stuff.
We got the Keenan Allen game. I need the Montez Sweat game.
That's next up. All right. Well, that'll do it for us here on the Week 6 recap. Appreciate all of the support. Like, subscribe, all of that good stuff. You can check us out at FB Lounge Pod. You can check out all of the various podcasts on the For Frequency Sake Podcast Network by going to forfantasysakeqc.com. We'll see you back here next week.
This has been a For Frequency Sake Podcast Network production. For more great content, subscribe to For Frequency Sake on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter.